Well, you may have heard Elizabeth Warren is making a year-end fundraising push, a big one, sending multiple emails to supporters asking them to help her campaign reach its goal. Now, so far this quarter, Senator Warren has raised $17 million, but that's about a 30% drop from the previous one. And it also coincides with a drop in the polls. Here to talk about it from Real Clear Politics, Susan Crabtree. Good of you to be with us today on this holiday weekend. Thank you.
Absolutely, Laura.
All right. So some following along with the Warren campaign trail, I've talked to some people out there say it feels like Warren's original support for Medicare for All had a direct impact on her poll numbers and now on her political donations, too. So the first question I have for you is, could this be a holiday slump? It's the end of the year, or is this truly a troubling sign for the Warren campaign?
Well, she still has a couple more days before the end of the quarter. We'll have to figure out what other candidates got, too. But it really comes as no surprise that someone who's been engaging in class warfare and slamming her competitors for taking donations for billionaires and millionaires would be having trouble fundraising now. It's a little bit ironic, though. She's really slid it in the polls in recent weeks after basically giving Biden a run for his money in the fall. She slid down to third nationally at 15.8% in the Real Clear Politics average of polls. And then it's next to Sanders and Biden. So, and when you look at the early primary voting states, she's now fourth behind Buttigieg, Sanders, and Biden. So I think she's been suffering that she got hit from the left and the center for her Medicare for All plan. It's going to cost $20 to $50 trillion, depending on the economist you talk to. And that she's really suffered from that. But also, I think a little credibility problem here. When she went on the attack against Buttigieg, a lot of people said that was effective right afterwards, but it opened up sort of uncorked a backlash with this wine cave comments. She hit him over having a fundraiser in Wine Cave, and all of a sudden every journalist in America was looking at every fundraiser she had during her Senate runs, and turns out she had a few high-dollar fundraisers herself, including one in New York that had wine selling for $6,000 a bottle.
And I heard, too, also that there were some souvenir bottles, too, and somebody has pulled those out of the archives as well. Some political observers have said that the donation slump also could have been caused by a faltering momentum over the last few months. She was essentially, as you mentioned, running neck and neck with the former Vice President Joe Biden during the fall. Her level of support has seemed to take a hit with her recent shift in language on the trail as well. She's been using the word choice more, saying it's the public's choice if we transition to Medicare for All. So it's the momentum, it's the money, and it's the language. What do you read into that?
Well, I think if you're talking about choice, a lot of critics say she's going to eliminate choice and eliminate private insurance when she moves everyone to the government Medicare for All plan. So I think that's a little bit disingenuous on her part and could be alienating voters, mainstream voters that are going for Buttigieg and Biden in Iowa and New Hampshire. And, Sanders is also surging in the early primary voting states, and he is a bit of a native son in New Hampshire, representing Vermont. So if he comes out of those early primary states with a big surge, it could be a Biden-Sanders race, and she could be pretty much knocked out. And it's really not surprising that you would have a representative from the left and the more mainstream of the party emerging from these primary states. Sanders has a real chance in Nevada, too. So it could be interesting. We're going to see in the next 5 weeks how it shakes out. But I would put my money on Sanders at this point, and Elizabeth Warren is fading because of these sort of these credibility problems she's been having.
And back to looking at how the money is coming in, whether it's from, big donors or not, it's always a hot topic in politics when it comes to driving donations. Warren asked her supporters on Friday to chip in anything, asking for $2 or, quote, whatever you can. Then today, and we just got this in a few hours ago, she sent out another email with the subject line, a good chunk behind, in reference to her numbers being down, adding in her email to her supporters, if we don't pick up the pace right now, we won't be in the strongest possible position heading into 2020. An obvious point that she's making, but when you hear that language going to her supporters, will we see some kind of a push? And here we have some numbers up on the screen for the Warren campaign fundraising, looking at the quarters to date. This fourth quarter of $17 million, you look back at the third quarter of 24.6. 2026. Will she see the numbers that she needs?
Well, as I said before, I think that she made a tactical error in trying to compete with Sanders for the left lane of her party. Yeah. He really has a loyal following, and even despite his heart attack, we've seen his fundraising numbers basically outpace hers. In the third quarter, he had 25.4 million, I believe it was. And so he is really, in the last few weeks, like I said, surging in those early primary voting states. And that is attracting, whoever has the momentum usually tracks a lot of the donations, especially when you're talking about more of the grassroots individual donors rather than these big millionaires and billionaires that give to the other candidates in the party.
Now, you guys have been tracking the numbers for a very long time, obviously. So when you take a look at the big picture, which Democratic hopeful do you see rising to the top here? Polls, donations, who's going to pull it out? What do you think you're seeing in the tea leaves here?
If you look at Iowa and New Hampshire, it's a Biden-Sanders race. Even though Buttigieg is in the lead there, I don't think he can pull it off when it comes to South Carolina. You have Biden in double-digit leads in South Carolina. When you get to the other primary states, the national polling averages are going to start setting in, and Biden is still in the lead. He's around 28.8% there, and Elizabeth Warren is fading. Sanders is coming in around 19%. Elizabeth Warren has 15.4%. Buttigieg is behind that. So I think you're really seeing this come down to a Biden-Sanders primary contest with representing both lanes of the Democratic Party. Biden has had a bit of a free lane for himself. He's going to get some competition from Bloomberg and Buttigieg a little bit, but I think those are only on the margins for now. His obviously has household name recognition from the Obama presidency, and I think it will come down after the early voting states. In 5 weeks, you're going to see it be a Biden-Sanders contest.
All right, fair enough. Susan Crabtree, thanks so much for being on with us today. We appreciate your time and your perspective. Thank you.